in my opinion, what I perceive the world, how I perceive the reality is we are living in circles, concentric circles from one another. These are the cycles from smaller scales to the grandest of scales. So basically, the from beginning from 1 minute cycle of a 1 minute or 12 hours or 24 hours a day, then the weeks come and the solar cycles, the lunar cycles, months, the year. Then there are greater cycles like galactic cycles also, and I perceive the universe have its own cycles. So a very renowned scientist by the name Roger Penrose has laid down a theory to with the by substantiating it with some equations and derivations. He laid down a model.
Nice, welcome. What's on your mind, man?
Are you a
Yeah,
Hindu or you're Christian? What's your faith?
well, you can think take me as an ex-Hindu, someone who is born in a Hindu family, seen the rituals,
Okay, okay. Well,
Nice.
okay.
through
Well,
and through.
do you believe in God, or do you believe that are you more are you a theist, or you agnostic atheist? What are you?
No, sir, I'm not agnostic. I'm purely atheist. I
Okay, you're
completely,
a theist.
uh,
Okay, you
I
believe in God. You
completely,
believe
yeah.
in. Okay.
No, 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 no,
Sorry.
No, he's atheist.
I
He doesn't
completely
believe. He doesn't.
reject
Oh, he's atheist.
He
Oh,
rejects.
I
He
thought you said
idea
rejects.
he's
of the
Yeah.
existence of God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
oh, atheist. Atheist. Okay, I apologize.
Okay. So why? What happened? Why do you believe that?
Yeah, because I don't think there is any entity which is that much powerful as it is described by the different ideologies or religious groups. So I think the idea itself has caused a lot of harm throughout the centuries. I mean, throughout the millenniums, since the emergence of the Jews and their expansions, their invasions, and their idea which propelled and which was also modified and accepted and transformed, reformed, or into something else like Christianity or Islam. I believe they all belong to the same lineage. That's all.
Okay. So it's you just have an issue with morality. Then is that if that's what I'm
No,
gathering?
sir. No, sir.
Yeah, it's
Morality, I
morality.
believe, is also developed through our uh, through the development of the civilization in general all over the globe through millenniums. The morality is also developed.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that you don't believe in the existence of God because it's been more of a harm than it has a benefit.
Yes, yes, exactly, sir.
Okay.
As what has
How
been
did you draw to
seen,
that conclusion? I'm not understanding how you drew to that conclusion. I'm curious how you drew to that conclusion.
sir,
Yeah.
as we can see the religious fanaticism in India, as you can see when the Modi government and the RSS regime has taken over the government and the administrations of the constitutional
What does
pillars.
politics have anything to do with it?
No, they are actually doing the same what anybody, if what is done in the Khilafas or the Crusades, what the Christians have done, it's all the same, I think. So religious fanaticism has all every time it has caused harm. I've not seen any.
You know
So
what?
I
fanaticism is
can
what causes harm,
So
not actual religion. Then.
yeah. So I was gonna ask. Well, sorry. Can you tell me your name one more time? I forgot your name.
My name is Chetan. You can call me Chetan. It's not my real name. Actually.
Architan. Okay. So Chitan, I
Yeah.
was gonna ask you. So I do agree with you that there has been, us as humans historically, there have been many wars in the name of religion. My question to you is, historically, do you think even if it would not be in the name of religion, do you still think there'd still be many wars?
Yes. Yes. Of course. Because
So
the
wouldn't so 1 second.
basic
Oh, okay.
necessities were there.
So
Yeah, to
just follow
fulfill
along
the
with me,
basic
right?
necessities
So
of the
it's the fact
expansion, the
that so
agriculture. The
Chitan, follow along with me, okay? So
hmm,
because even without the religious context, meaning even if they don't say I'm doing this because of religious worth, whatever, there'd still be many wars. So it's kind of left anecdotally, and it's anecdote to say, well, it was because of religion, it was because of this. So using things like the Crusades or the Inquisition or whatever, that still does not mean that it's religion that's caused it. It's the people, and people don't need any reason to start a fight. I mean, that's historically, that's even today. You see people getting angry for nothing. You see people, if I don't Chitan, if I don't like you, like literally if I look at you and I don't like you, I can think of any reason that I want to start a fight with you. If I say, you know what, I don't like how Chitan looks, he's more handsome than I am, so I'm going to accidentally bump into him when he's walking, and then I'm going to fight him because of that. That's what people do. So because you're saying that, warfare and the issue that's going on, people hide under the name of religion to do so. But that, don't blame the religion for things that people do. So meaning the religion aspect of it, it's not, you can't blame the religion for the things that people do in the name of what they try to say it's the religion. So it's the people, not the religion itself. So what we're asking you is, you made a morality claim and you're saying that, well, religion causes more harm than good. Tell me exactly, based on the religion. I don't care what people do. Tell me more about what the religion says. And alhamdulillah, here we're Muslims. If you're saying that, are you saying that Islam, not Muslims, Islam causes more harm than good? And if that is the case, if you would say yes, tell me, where is it in the Quran where we are commanded to cause harm? Tell me.
no, I cannot say specifically. I cannot quote the phrases, but I can surely say that my argument may have been misunderstood. But
Okay. Sorry,
I
go
actually
ahead and
meant,
clarify.
yeah, I actually meant, yeah. You said the people do harm, cause harm, but I'm saying, bro, listen, the ideology that drives the people or
Yeah,
biases
and that
them,
was his point.
motivates
His
them.
point is, if you actually read Islam for Islam, and if you look at it sincerely, nothing about Islam is pushing this fanatical ideology which you have inside an idea inside your head. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. So, like, for example,
Mhm.
Islam tells you not to harm innocents. Islam tells you to take care of your parents. Islam tells you to stay away from drugs. Islam tells you to stay away from alcohol, intoxication, things that could lead to you being belligerent. It tells you to stay away from gambling, which could lead to financial distress and have you commit domestic violences and other form of violences that are non-war related. It tells you to stay away from usury, so that way that you're
Interesting.
not being inundated with debt and you are, not doing the things like these people. I think this was probably about 6 or 7 months ago where I read a story of a guy who literally went into his airplane, a small airplane, and drove it into the federal building. Literally flew it straight into the federal building, and at no point in time did he stop and say maybe this is a bad idea, because of all the debt and tax that he was inundated on. So how can you tell me that the ideology is creating these types of fanatics when it's not the case at all? You have billions of Muslims around the world, and you have less than a fraction of a percent that are committing some type of fanaticism due to a misunderstanding of what it teaches. And by
And
the
by the
way,
way,
I'm
go ahead,
sorry,
go ahead, go ahead.
I just want to
No,
conclude
no,
this.
you got it.
Yeah, by the way, it's not even because of their misunderstanding that it's because they're in such a desperate situation that was created by either political or geocentric strife in a particular area that caused the collapse of their entire system, and poverty to such extremes that the only thing left for that person to do is to now go out and, harm others while even ending their own lives.
So, and Chitan, you were talking about fanaticism, right? Let's talk about this word in general because I want to make sure you have a clear understanding of what that means and what the implications of what you're saying. For somebody to be a fanatic at something, it has nothing to do with what their ideology claims to be. It has everything to do with who they are as people. So for me, when we use I'm a fan, I'm a fanatic. If I'm a radical, if I'm an extremist, it does not matter what I'm extreme about. Anything I subscribe to, I'm gonna be extreme with it. Meaning, let's say, for example, me, one thing that some people know me is I'm a big fan of comic books. I grew up with comic books, right? So comic books don't tell people to do bad things, or they don't promote commanding the readers to do bad things. They don't command people to do anything. They're just books for you to read, drawings and superheroes for you to read, right? But let's say me, I'm someone with a poor mental health, and I read a comic book and I see a superhero doing one thing, and I say, you know what, cool, let me go, let me go do that same thing. Let me go start web slinging off a building. Let me jump off a building. I don't promote that, but and then I do it. Somebody says, why'd you do it? I would just say, well, this comic book, I read this comic book, it told me to do it. That has nothing to do with the comic book itself. It's literally me. So when we're looking at religion, this is why I said earlier, don't stop focusing on what people do. Start focusing on what they're basing their actions of. Start focusing on what it says, because somebody can claim to do something in the name of Islam. Somebody can claim to do something in the name of Christianity. Somebody can claim to do something in the name of whatever. The point that you need to focus on is, does this actually say what they are saying it's saying? Meaning, if someone's claiming to do bad things in the name of Islam, research Islam, read the Quran, and say, well, wait a minute. This person said Islam made him do this, but I'm reading here. Islam says the opposite. Islam says to feed the poor. Islam says to don't drink alcohol. Islam says don't gamble. Islam says a whole lot of stuff. But this person is, I don't see anything that's not on Islam anymore. That's on the person. So fanaticism is always about the people who claim to be following that ideology, not exactly on that particular ideology itself. And the difference that you can catch is not to focus on the people, Chitan, is to actually learn the religion in this aspect. And this is why we're trying to get you, Brother Morris is trying to get you to understand what Islam says. Because so far from what we're understanding, you're using history, you're using subjective anecdotal experiences, and you're basing it off on people, but not the actual teaching, because you don't know the teaching. So let's say for the rest of the conversation, Chitan, would you be open to actually learning about what this particular, because we claim Islam to be the truth, the only truth and nothing but the truth, right? Would you be open to actually learning what Islam says so you can make the decision for yourself whether or not it's the truth? Yes or no?
Of course, agree.
Thank you. Well, Brother Musa, you want to take it away?
Yeah. What? Oh, did you say Brother Morris or Brother Mansour?
Either one.
You want to go?
But I said, brother.
I mean, just what question do you have for us, bro? You can direct it generally to the panel, and anybody that feels like jumping on, they
Okay,
can
Muresh, I
jump.
can engage with you for a while. Then I can
Or,
move on to Mansoor if you like.
no.
So, in my opinion, what I perceive the world, how I perceive the reality is, we are living in circles, concentric circles from one another. These are the cycles from smaller scales to the grandest of scales. So basically, the from beginning from 1 minute cycle of a 1 minute, or 12 hours or 24 hours a day, then the weeks come, and the solar cycles, the lunar cycles, months, the year, Then there are greater cycles like galactic cycles also, and I perceive the universe have its own cycles. So a very renowned scientist by the name Roger Penrose has laid down a theory to with the by substantiating it with some equations and derivations. He laid down a model. The model basically says the universe itself is a process of beginning and expansion at the indefinite for the indefinite time. Then, when the things get so dispersed from one another, a new bang occurs, and this cycle goes and goes and goes indefinitely, infinite loops. So each cycle is described as eon, termed as eon, basically. The dark ages comes, then the new beginning occurs. So this goes indefinitely. So basically, the universe itself is a self-regulating, self-administers, self-propelled a mechanism, a function, or a structure, whatever you can call it, however you can perceive.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it has its own aspects and which cannot be ignored, neglected.
Okay. So, I mean, it seems to me from what I'm gathering is it's a very naturalistic explanation of the
Yes,
universe.
yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Naturalist. Yes.
Okay. No problem. So, if we take a purely naturalistic explanation, then there's a couple of things that come to my mind that I would encourage you to reflect on.
Of course.
Okay. The first thing is what was the primary cause? So just because things are going in cycles, it doesn't necessarily mean that there wasn't a causer of the cycles. You understand what I'm saying? So it doesn't negate the existence of God because God could have just caused the cycle and now it's going in cycles. And this is one of the biggest things where it's one of those things where it sounds really cool. Oh, there's this like infinite loop, so to speak, right? But remember, the whole idea of infinity is based off of this idea of time, right? Like infinity is just like a pure abstract thought. Like for example, if you were to say, "Oh, I have infinity and I did infinity plus 5," what would the answer be? The answer would just be infinity. Or I did infinity minus 1. The answer would again just be infinity, right? You can't like take infinity over infinity and divide it by itself and then it cancels itself out. It doesn't work that way. So it's a pure abstract thought. Okay. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. The second thing is in regards to purpose and meaning. If we're just this thing that just expands, goes through cycles, and collapses, what's the point? What's the point of all this? What's the point of suffering? What's the point of any trials, any tribulations that we're going through? What's the point of even existing? And to me, when I take a look at creation, I take a look at like things from the smallest angles, like let's say, for example, your fingernail, right? Really, really small thing. But without it, you wouldn't be able to grip a glass to drink water comfortably from a glass. So even the smallest things have purpose and have meaning. And then on the grander scale of things, like a human being and having consciousness, right, which is the third thing that I'll jump into in a little bit, it would be really a shame if we just take the pure position of you have this incredible walking, talking, intellectual, sensory, feeling, imaginative thing, and it's all for nothing. Nothing. To me, it's a complete waste. Okay. Now, in regards to the third thing, which is the hard problem of consciousness. where did that stem from a naturalistic point of view? Because you have to have a naturalistic explanation. It has to boil down to something chemical, physical, yet the mind, they have no idea. By they, I mean there's no empirical, there's no something that we can look under a microscope or a machine that we can see, hey, this actually in fact exists. But here we are, you and I, we're talking and we're having these intricate, lovely discussions where we're trying to get down to the bottom of this stuff. And then the fourth thing that I want to bring to your attention is, and this happened to me when I was, on my J days, my ignorance days, where I really lent a lot of credence to other people, whether for their scientific background or whether for their sophistry as to like what they're trying to bring to the table as far as like their argumentation is and so on. And I'm not lending credence to, and again, this is me talking at the time of my ignorance, I wasn't lending credence to revelation. I wasn't lending credence to prophets. I wasn't lending credence to a message. So I started weighing things incorrectly. And I would say, okay, this guy, he's got a PhD. So clearly he's really, really, really smart. And that must mean that I can definitely learn something from him. But at the end of his statements, if I were to read, in regards to the cycle, right? If I were to read from Roger Penrose, like in depth, at the end of the day, bro, he would just state, this is just a theory, and this is where my thought process is. And as far as the data that I have from the knowledge that I've acquired within my lifetime, this is the best thing that I can put forward. Right? So I don't want to like put this guy on such a pedestal that he's telling the truth when he himself would ultimately say, this is just a theory, albeit even if it's a scientific theory, and if he has all these, linking evidences for it, at the end of the day, he's following conjecture. Ironically, the Quran gives you this argument. Did they create themselves? Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, he literally, exactly what you're saying is already mentioned in the Quran. And the answer is given to you. There needs to be agency. There needs to be power. There needs to be will. There needs to be volition for something to happen. You can't just have something create itself, because these laws of what the universe is and has, they had to have come from somewhere. These constraints had to have come from somewhere. Like, how does an electron behave? How does a proton behave? How does, these cosmic gases, how does the radiation, how does gravity behave? These are all laws that were discovered by human beings through various methods, but there has to have been a programmer of these laws. So you can't just say, or at least from my worldview and my understanding, I'm not comfortable to say, oh, this all just kind of figured itself out. And it's just an endless expansion contraction cycle, and they were always there. All the fine tuning in the world, it was all just there. It did it by itself. To me, that is it's a very like bold and dangerous kind of statement to go on, right? So let me hear what you have to say to that.
Yes, of course, sir. So about the first objection that you have, or the question that you wrote, that you raised, so I can answer it later. Okay, what is the purpose of everything, and why is everything there? Okay, through my perception, how I perceive it, I can explain to you everything, how I have perceived it. So first off, I need to answer you about your second objection, which was the problem of consciousness, basically.
Yeah.
The consciousness is actually still the hard problem, but it is inconclusive that there is some aspect, a third aspect or a second aspect to the primary, the substance, the material, the molecules, the brain functions, everything, the neural activity and everything with the physiology basically. So as it is perceived something non-physical, I might not be very confused about it, because I can let it free for the others to ponder upon, because those who are the experts of the field, they can answer it better, and we can uh,
I just want to
later
pause
on.
for just a second,
Yeah,
and this might help
yeah,
you. The
mhm.
conclusion is self-evident. We know that it exists, right? That the where it's inconclusive is the hard problem. So we know that consciousness exists already, but for you to say that it's for you to take a naturalistic position and to say, hey, this is purely a naturalistic explanation, that's where the blank is. And they've been at this for years. So but here's the difference is that you and I both know it exists, and you have accepted a naturalistic position without actually having the conclusive evidence of what the naturalistic argument is. You've accepted theories, right? Like they'll call it a black box problem in psychology, or they'll be like, oh, okay, it's like the inner workings of the mind. But remember, it needs to have a naturalistic explanation. And all I'm
So
saying is,
basically,
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
basically
all I'm
the
saying is you've
yeah,
accepted it, right? You've accepted it. But there is
yes, yes,
nothing to accept. The reasons are not there. The conclusion is there, right? And then
no,
my reasons are also there.
basically the arguments against the existence of something beyond the physiological aspect of a sentient being, the or a living being, the consciousness basically is neglected or ignored so much, because uh, the physiology or the brain functions can be manipulated through various chemical substances like LSD, the methamphetamine, the cannabis, etc., through high doses. The perceptions literally bends. Basically, you see the garden where there is no garden. You're sitting in a room, and people start hallucinating. So, what's affected? The physiology basically affected. The neurological functions are basically affected.
Yeah.
The motor nerves are disrupted. Yeah.
Yes, you're right. You're 100% right. Now, but take the situation of what you just did. So, for example, I can tell you right now, hey, I'm going to go, starve, and I'm going to start hallucinating, or I'm going to go force myself to not sleep. What we're assuming is that the person is given it's complete like homeostatic conditions, meaning they're perfectly fine as far as their food, water intake, and we're working with someone who is of sound mind, sound reason, and not under any type of intoxication or influence in any way. They're just completely in a solemn state of mind, right? Because you have to have a solution for both. Now, when you say something like, oh, well, we can feed people drugs and it'll alter their chemical makeup, it'll alter their state of mind. But as far as their consciousness existing and being linked to a process, like a physical process, hard physical process, that's not the determining factor, because you have someone else who has a complete solemn state of mind, who is not under any um, you know medicinal, whatever you want to call it, and yet their consciousness exists. It's not like you have to take a pill and now you get consciousness. So I understand what you're trying to say. The issue is when we're dealing with someone that's just completely normal, like it's self-evident, right? We can take drugs and it'll alter our psyche, but the consciousness still exists. And by the way, you
Yes,
might
yes. By
you might
yeah,
have a
by
tolerance. Huh? Sorry.
Yeah, by saying this, I can understand where you're going.
Yeah.
That
So, like for example,
the
I
drug
can.
is altering my consciousness, but
Yeah,
I'm still aware that it is altering my consciousness,
it's altering your
my
psyche, not your consciousness. You're
my
still
psyche.
conscious,
Yeah.
right? Like you still
Yes.
you
Yes.
still exist, whether or not you know what I'm
Yep. Yep.
saying. So, and then
Yes.
also
Yes.
this
Yes.
brings up a really fun food for thought. That's where you have like certain people that have like allergic reactions to something, and they can have a swelling of the brain, and then they'll start hallucinating. Or you have people that have different tolerance levels to intoxication, right? Like a 350-pound guy who's been drinking 30 years of his life is going to have a different tolerance level compared to a 95-pound girl who's having a drink for the first time. You know what I'm saying? So there
So
are.
basically, doesn't it again comes to reduces to the physiology or the physical prowess of of an individual?
Well, it does in part, but not in whole. So, like, for example, you still need your brain in order to be able to think about stuff. You can't just like, chop someone's head off and be like, okay, think about stuff, like that's not how it works. That's what I'm saying is you have to take a look at someone being in absolutely normal, all conditions are normal, right? You're not feeding someone drugs for them to become conscious. You're feeding someone drugs for them to alter what their reality is based on you changing a chemical composition, but they're still conscious. They're just conscious in an alternate reality, or they're conscious in a
Yes. Yes.
toxically induced reality. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Yes. 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 Yes.
So
Well, it is
that's the
still.
tough part.
Cut-
Yeah, that's the tough part. But
yeah.
I can see how you would naturally want to jump to that because neurons are firing, synapses are reacting, and so on and so on.
Yeah. My overall perception, or if I engage with in a decent argument with someone, I can only say that it is an emergent property of the human neural activity or physiology. That's the standard model that is perceived all over the globe, and it is taught in the
Yeah.
universities as well.
Yeah, and then
So
you have unique circumstances too where
yeah, it's still a paradox. It's still a paradox, a mystery that is needed to be solved. We cannot
I
just
think it's solved. I think that it's not solved through science. That's what I think. I think this is solved through, because remember, the question is, what is the origin of all this stuff? The question is, where did this originate from? Did this originate from, like the position that we're exploring right now? Did this self originate, or did this actually originate from a different source that has power, that has volition, that has will, right? And then
no, basically.
uh-huh.
Yeah, these cycles that I've uh, mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
basically the famous physicist Lawrence Krauss also tells us that the universe out of nothing, okay, out of nothing. I think he's wrong about it, and most of the people think he's wrong. Many
Mhm.
in the scientific community itself. So one of them is the Sir Roger Penrose himself, and he basically says the relativity is becomes meaningless uh, beyond the dark ages when the Hawking radiation disperses the black holes and etc etc etc. Extreme dark ages, no light, no nothing. The massless particles like neutrinos and the photons also disperse through eternity, through the infinite expanses. Then from the starting point of the previous emergence, the new emergence rises, and the whole process comes to the action again and again and again. So this happens just to preserve the information. Basically, the infinite cycles basically go through this evolving process from low entropy to high entropy, hydrogen to helium to iron to and so on, gold, uranium, etc. So this is how I've perceived, and we are the actually this self-regulating, self-sustained, self-propelled universe. We are the conscious aspect of it, and we are here to just observe it and understand it. And through time, we could be so advanced, I believe, that we could change our physiology, live longer, and we could, rise as a race of a beings that can may observe the bangs itself. So maybe that could be the purpose of the whole chaos. This whole
Well, a couple things
yeah.
come to mind. The first thing is back to what I was telling you about purpose. So let's run a scenario. Let's say that these cycles are happening. Okay. What happens to you? Do you ever come back?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
don't think there is
Right.
something like soul which is recycles from one body to another, from one lifetime to another. I don't think so.
Right. And this is problematic because now you have something that is purposeless, right? So, like, let's say, for example, you were talking about the preservation of information or like a memory bank, right? So how does this how does it get to a spot where it's an evolutionary memory bank and the data is being preserved so that the next cycle will be smarter than the one before it? See, there's all these like
Yes, yes.
presuppositions, but there's actually no evidences for these things. And
I can
it just
understand.
sounds cool. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where it sounds
I can understand. This can be a possibility. It may be cool. It may sound cool, but this can well be a very much possibility of
right.
how
But
the
then
reality could be at the
yeah.
grandest of scales.
So now here's the other thing. What we're neglecting, so let's come into my worldview real quick. What we're neglecting right now is that from your point of view, it's assuming that the creator never revealed himself and that we're on this quest to figure out what is the grand purpose of our existence, assuming that the creator never revealed himself. But you actually have instances in history where people claimed that they were talking to another agent that was outside of this realm.
Understand?
You understand what I'm
Yes, yes,
saying? So now, if
yes,
you
yes, yes.
yeah. So now, from my worldview, let's bring that possibility in, okay? And then let's explore what would be more of a rational thing to take hold, right? So, from my worldview, you have purpose, you have meaning, you have guidance, okay? And then you have the guarantee that this is going to happen. And then you take all of that with the evidences and the proofs of the creator indeed revealing himself and then giving you things which would not be possible for any human being to know. So, for example, you have prophetic statements or you have statements that are going to happen in the future and they transpired, like they're time bound and they've transpired in exactly the way that they were supposed to transpire. Or you had claims that were made by the messenger of this agent that completely withstood the test of time given what I would call impossible conditions. Okay, so like let me give you an example. You know, in the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said that, you know, he is going to preserve this book, he's going to preserve this message, and likewise that Muhammad ﷺ was going to be protected by him, okay, he told his guards, I don't need you anymore. So he actually had bodyguards, and when the revelation came down that he's good to go, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be the guardian of it, you know, you guys can go away now. Now, understand what the conditions were. The conditions were this guy was being hunted to be assassinated. They were basically exiled and they were on the run. And there was multiple attempts on his life. So it's, to me, it is more reasonable to believe that some entity actually is protecting this person rather than not. Because he actually survived, delivered the message in its entirety, and then passed away. So, you know, you gotta kind of welcome the idea, number one, that this entity revealed himself. Number two, welcome the idea that this entity had selected a messenger to deliver the message. Number three, the the idea that this message is preserved. And we had mentioned to previous callers that were on here saying that there's a falsification test of this message. And I just want to point you to just the very beginning of this Quran, which says that this is a book in which there is no doubt. So there's a really bold claim that's being made here by the Quran. The claim is this is 100% true. There's not a shadow of a doubt in this, and this is how things will be. And if you don't believe it so, then try to find an error or contradiction in it, or try to falsify it in some way. Now, you can do that through many challenges. Since you're not an Arab speaker, I'm not going to, present the challenge of trying to replicate, a surah. That's not that challenge wasn't meant for you and me. But what you can do is you can challenge the prophecies. You can challenge the statements that it makes in there. You can challenge anything else that you wish. If there's internal contradictions, these are things that you can use your reasoning, and you can use research to see if there's an actual issue. And if you don't find anything, then all the message is asking you to do is just to say, I submit. That's it. And I don't think the message is unreasonable. I think it aligns perfectly with what someone's natural inclination is. Meaning, people are born naturally believing in a higher power. There's actually not a single society on the planet that has been discovered where they were just atheists by default. Something has happened to them, whether it be social conditioning or, some other like parental stuff where they have been pitched atheism. They may have a belief in like a higher power, and they might bow down to a rock, but they still believe in a higher power. So by default, we believe that there's a natural inclination to the belief in a higher power. And you have to get engineered to think otherwise. Now, the guidelines of what this book presents are very simplistic. They're very, very attainable. It takes some dedication for sure, but they're extremely attainable, right? And then the result of these guidelines is full of purpose. It's full of meaning for not only this world, but the next. You understand what I'm saying? So everything that the book tells you to do is going to fulfill your life to a state of contentment and ultimately happiness for today and tomorrow. And nothing else can offer that. This worldview of a cyclical cosmology can't offer that. Atheism can't offer that. You might get temporary happiness from something. So like, for example, hey, I'm just going to go follow my own desires. I'm going to go kick it, party, do whatever I want to do. But then you're going to get burned out. It's just, you know what I'm saying? I really encourage you to really reflect on that, because what's the play, man? Like why are we here? What's the deal? If it amounts to nothing, then you're saying that you're nothing and I'm nothing. And number one, I don't want to be nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm under really the firm belief that someone has to wake up and say, I want to believe. I want to believe that I will not amount to nothing, that I'm not going to just pass away, go 6 feet under and turn into ash and dust, and worms are going to eat me. And my life is worth more than that. You know what I'm saying? It's just, and then I believe that guidance will come to you, and you can use your reasoning faculties to come to the conclusion of, is this guidance true or not? It's a really, like, if you really break down it from like a brick by brick, it's a really sad state of mind to think like that you amount to nothing. And again, I'm not saying that insultingly. I'm literally saying that you are worth it. Your life is worth something. And I think it's worth a lot more than you think, bro. It's not worth what this, PhD guy is pitching. That, imagine going and studying the world, like seeing all the amazing things that are available, from like the cosmos to things in like a cellular structure and just going like, yeah, this is all just cycles and we're all just ash and dust. Like, dude,
No, no,
that's
no.
crazy, man.
No, basically, naturalistic viewpoint is not so much sadistic like you may think. It is more of an optimistic point of view. Basically,
How?
the purpose is basically, well, we are so much evolved that we have created structures, artificial structures, or possibly we could build someday a Dyson sphere or whatnot. But I think the whole purpose of existence, the infinite cycles that are moving indefinitely, processing itself, and this whole purpose is to generate a species like us. There could be there well amounts of the last time I was reading a report where it says in just within one quadrant of our galaxy there could be thousands of intellectual advanced races. They also gave them degrees or levels like stage 1, stage 2, 3, 4, 5 civilizations. So this is basically not so earth centric, I would like to say. Okay, as we perceive,
Yeah,
like
I think.
think, no,
Mhm.
we basically think only we are here. The God only focuses on us. He needs everything from
What's wrong
us.
with you?
He expects
What's wrong
everything
with
from us.
you? As a matter of fact, the Quran even humbles us, right? It tells us that, do you think that you're the only creation, or do you think you're the most important thing? It's not the case. And that's why I think that if you haven't had a chance to read the Quran, bro, I really encourage you to read it, because it humbles you in many ways, right? Like even in the whole process of how we are created, at first you're elevated in a sense where you're ennobled, right? You, like, for example, why is your head at the top of your body? And why is it that you can bring food to your mouth? You don't have to go down to your food like a dog, right? In one way, human beings are very ennobled. But in another way, you're reminded and you're very humbled. Like, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes through the procreation process, and that, he tells us that you're just ejaculated fluid. So it serves as a healthy reminder of like, hey, don't get ahead of yourself. You have this wonderful construct about you where we can exchange ideas and thoughts and stuff like that, but don't forget where you came from. You're still literally seminal fluid, right? So it just, you got to spend some time with it, man. And I think you're on the right track. Like, as far, I can tell you're very sincere, and I genuinely wish you well. Like, I genuinely wish that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide you, because you are inquisitive, bro. And I think you should remain on that inquisition. I think you should establish certain principalities, especially principles on like self-worth, so that that there's more to it than this, right? There's more to it than just, and it's interesting, because like, if you, from the, you said earth centric, but the entire cyclical nature of what you presented, or what you're currently accepting with Roger Penrose, is earth centric, when in the Islamic position it's completely different. It tells us to focus on the hereafter, and it says don't just keep looking at the dunya. Like, don't just focus on what's in front of you and material things, and there's a bigger world out there,
Yeah,
and there's a bigger,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
But Maurice, nobody has seen or have returned to tell us that he has seen a place in another realm which is called
Yeah, that's not true, dude.
Nurkam's
That's
Jannah
not
or
true.
Jahannam.
That's not true, man. That's not true. The Prophet ﷺ saw both. He
Bro,
did.
that's the claim of the Prophet Sallallahu
That's
Alaihi
right.
Wasallam
That's right. And
himself
you got
said,
to test the claim, bro.
self-claimed.
You have to test it. You
So,
have to. That's why you got to test it, man. You got to sit there and really, you have to get to know who this person was, what was his journey, what did he actually experience, and is there validity to the things that he's saying? And I think that as you're going through your journey, and I respect where you're at, you just haven't arrived to that point where you have accepted it to be true. because you're wherever you are, right? You haven't either dug deep enough or you weren't sincere with yourself. Like, it's a very bold claim for someone to be making that, man. It's a bold claim for someone to actually say, like, hey, I'm talking to God. I've seen the other realm. I'm receiving.
Okay. Since you're so emphasizing on reading the Quran, you're advising me to read the Quran. I have a few questions I would like to ask from one.
Give me your best question, because I want to be respectful to the other guests. We have like a full backstage. So I just want to be respectful to them, and I will welcome you back. And
No,
naturally,
actually,
you can
it's from
one of our channels. But what's the best one? And I'll make it short.
Okay. This is from the Quran, chapter 78, ayah 6 and 7. So basically,
sorry,
says,
what was the chapter, bro? I didn't hear. I'm gonna pull it up. What was it?
My apologies. It's 78, chapter 78. Ayah 6 and 7.
Okay.
So here Allah mentions or says, have we not made the earth as a wide expanse and the mountains as pegs? Okay. So I don't have the first statement, which is the earth has a wide expanse. I don't have any objection to it. My objection is basically on the mountains as pegs. The term is used, pegs. So basically, peg is something.
What translation are you looking at?
I'm basically looking on the Google.
Okay, so it actually the word that's translated. I like to use the Sahih International, and it's translated as steaks, like almost like not like a steak, like you're grilling a steak, but like an actual steak, like you're putting a steak into the ground. Okay.
A spike or a sharp object, like something.
Yeah, kind of like that. So now take a look at the anatomy of mountains. Okay. And how are they from the top?
I have actually searched it on the Google. If you type how are mountains formed, the Google describes it actually.
Yeah, it says mountains. It's not saying the formation of. So this isn't this is describing the formation of the mountains. This is a functionary description. So it's describing a function.
Okay, what does it? What's the function of it?
Okay, to my understanding, the function is in regards to tectonic activity, and it lessens the burden of tectonic activity because the plates are constantly moving, right? They're moving, one goes under the other, right?
Yep.
Okay, and when you have a stake put through, there's less movement now. So the vibration when they're moving.
Okay. I can understand what you've said, but I have to say something otherwise. So mountains form where two continental plates collide. You can perceive them as the tectonic plates which are underneath the lithosphere or whatever sphere. Since both plates have a similar thickness and weight, neither one will sink under one another. Okay, they do not settle like top and bottom like situation. Instead, they fold it in themselves and they rise upward from beneath the surface towards the heights above the surface. Okay, so it's completely different description. And if you are saying that the Quran, which is sent by the Supreme Almighty, the creator of everything, then doubts.
Yeah. So again, I think what's happening is you're confusing two things. One, the Quran is not a book of science. Okay. The Quran here is not talking about the tectonic plates. It's talking about a description of what the mountains are doing as pegs or as stakes. Okay. So when it comes to the stability of a region, right?
Okay, so they're basically in place so that the ground couldn't shake, right? With the
No, not
earthquakes.
not couldn't shake. It just makes it more stable.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
okay, I understood.
we're not. It's not saying that the
But
ground doesn't shake or doesn't move here. That's not. That's that you're extracting that. It is saying that they provide a form of stability. Okay, so
okay,
do they provide a form of stability? Yes. Now again, this is a sign for the people with their intellect at the time, and this was a claim that was being made. So did they have the scientific backing at the time to make this? And it's very, and this is what's so amazing to me about the Quran, is when you actually take something like this, a very simple statement like this, there's a claim that's being made passively. The claim is that these things have a function, they have a purpose. You don't see what they are because all you can see is the mountain itself. But there is a deeper meaning to what that mountain functions for. Okay?
Because like
Now,
even science tells us that mountains they have deep roots and they extend really deep into the mantle, right? And
Yeah,
that's exactly
it,
what the Quran is saying. You know
right.
that
the
yeah. So
the
so
roots
I
of the
don't know how is
mountain.
that
no,
not scientific because that's what
no.
I'm trying to
In this
understand.
if in this particular verse, it is said that mountains are pegged.
Yes, but
So
So
you have
let
to understand the colloquial. It's a
they are
description,
pegged. Some
right? It's a
if we
description.
peg something, we do it from upwards to downwards. Okay, but this motion that Geography 101 describes, this
No,
is
bro, that's
basically
not.
from the
That's not.
primary.
No, no,
This
no,
is
no, no.
from the primary school, bro.
No,
you
bro.
know
This is
what,
the
Here's what.
Mohsen,
primary education that I've seen.
more if I may.
Yes, please. Yes.
So I don't really know his name, but understand when we talk about when it says it's pegs. First of all, God says is have we not smoothed the earth like a describing it like a bed and made its mountains its pegs. Now, what are pegs? For one, it gives a actual a physical description by comparing it to pegs and also a function. It's a functionary measure verse where God is literally talking about okay, mountains. What is the function of a mountain? Meaning, what does a mountain do? It's not talking about how mountains are made. It's talking about the function of it, and as far as the actual description. And why is this profound? Fawad mentioned earlier that the roots of a mountain are 3 times larger than the actual mountains itself. So, however tall you think a mountain is, just know that whether it's Kilimanjaro, whether it's Mount Everest, however tall it is, the roots of those mountains are 3 times as big, 3 times as huge underground. And this is an actual description of what a peg or a stake or a nail looks like. When you're holding a peg, literally the part of which you put on into like you pierce into the ground or you pierce into something, that part used for piercing is used um is larger than the handle than what you're holding. So even that comparison of using a peg itself, it's giving a actual comparison as far as this function and the physical description. So that's why when science actually realized that the roots are 3 times as big, that was extremely profound. Because how is it that they couldn't it couldn't how is it that somebody in the middle of the desert understood the function of mountains and also what mountains look like under the description of mountains underground? That would not have been possible to know because of the advances in technology that allowed scientists to actually figure out more and more based upon archaeology and geology. So understand when we talk about pegs, when the Quran talks about mountains, it's talking about what does a mountain do. And one of the things a mountain does do, it's to stabilize the earth. Meaning without mountains, that with literally without mountains, everything that you think would, like, as far as earthquakes are concerned, as far as tsunamis, as far as a lot of geological issues, geological catastrophes, without mountains, it will literally be chaos without the use of mountains stabilizing the earth's the earth center or the earth in general. So the fact that God used pegs to, because that's actually what we use as pegs when we pin something down. For example, if I have a, do I have a pin right here? No, if I have a pin right here, right? What do I use a pin
Mhm.
for? I use it to pin something to a wall or to some, and without that pin,
Yes, yes.
what if I pin a paper to a wall, right?
Mhm.
What would the
Mhm.
I could let go of the pin and the paper would stay there on the wall, meaning the pin it's stabilizing the paper on the wall. If I remove the pin, what's going to happen to the paper? It's going to fall. So
I can
that
understand,
rem-
sir, but yeah,
so
the
yeah,
my
so
argument on
just
this
yeah,
the
so
function.
as long as we
Mhm.
understand as long as we understand the functionary criteria, also the physical description of what a pin looks like, that's exactly what how mountains are physically shown to be because of their roots. That's all. You don't no need to go too deep into. That's all it's talking about. It's not talking about development. It's not talking about plate tectonics. That's not what it's talking about.
Understood, sir. But
Okay, look,
I have to disagree with the functional argument of
but you
the
can't
existence of
listen.
mountains.
You can't disagree unless you take a look at what the actual wording is. So let's approach it from a linguistic perspective. So this is a classical Arabic dictionary. Okay, so here's the root word watada. Okay, and you have autad in that. Waljibala autada. That's what it says in the Quran. So it says to drive in a stake, fix a stake into the ground, fix a thing firmly. Autad. Stakes, hosts, pegs, chiefs, armies, poles of tents. The verse 78:7 is an allusion to the fact that the mountains owe their rise to the gradual balancing process to which the solid crust of the earth is subject. The reference is here to the mountain, which are fixed as pegs on the earth, or autad. Pegs are the symbols of the firmness and relative equilibrium which the surface of the earth has gradually achieved in the course of its geological history. Geology has established the fact that mountains have to have a great extent to make secure the earth against earthquakes. And it says here, classical Arabic, it says, Dhu al autada. In classical Arabic, this term is used idiomatically as a metonym for mighty dominion of firmness of power. The number of pegs supporting a Bedouin tent was determined by its size, which in turn depended on the status and the power of its owner. A mighty chieftain is often alluded to as be of many tent poles. It is told about Pharaoh that he was like a peg because his kingdom was firmly established as a tent when secured by stakes and pegs, or because he was a lord of large armies and hosts, or because he was in the habit of fastening the hands and feet of his victims to pickets driven into the ground. So now, this is where you have a true beauty of the eloquence of the Quran. So it's addressing things from multiple angles, and it's all within relative language that even a Bedouin can understand, a lay person can understand. So when they heard this, and when you hear this now, you can see what it's actually addressing, which is the functionality and the firmness, and for it to be a source of equilibrium, as it states. So now you have to ask yourself, when you go and conduct your scientific research, are the mountains actually a source of equilibrium? Because this is how the Arabic is understood. Nothing else. Anything that you bring to the table from here on out is just going to be, I'm just going to throw it out because this is directly from the source. So you have to, when you see something, you have to see how is this understood. When you have the presentation of how it's understood, not only in regards to might, but functional power and equilibrium and stabilization, as well as geology, but you have an example of tents and what the pegs were used for in a tent to provide stabilization. Bro, it's a clear cut case at this point. I think if you try to argue against this with the argument that you're presenting, you're going to be doing yourself a disservice. And I think at this point, you should probably take some time to go back and reflect on this particular argument.
No, wait a second. Wait a second. Wait a second. Why then, if they are their main purpose is to stabilize or whatever you have just said,
Nobody
then
said
why do
main
we?
purpose. It just has a
Okay,
function.
no, yes, yes, I can understand. Then why do we have so much seismic activities in all those mountain ranges, like the Himalayas.
And again, it's not saying you're not going to have seismic activity. You can have seismic activity, but what is the actual result of the seismic activity in places that have mountains and then in ones that don't? So if you take a look at seismic, let's say a 3.0 earthquake hits a place that has no mountains. You're going to feel it at a 3.0 scale. And let's say that a 3.0 earthquake, just for comparison's sake, hits another place that has mountains, tons of mountain ranges in it. Are you going to feel it at a 3.0? No, you're not. That's all.
I can understand that it also occurs in plains, but in mountains, the activity has, noticed or recorded very frequently.
Brother, I'm going to repeat this one more time because I think we're going around in a circle.
Okay,
you're not listening
no
to what
problem.
I'm saying. What I'm saying is, here's what I'm saying. Let's say we have 100 earthquakes in a place that has mountains. And let's say we have one earthquake in a place that doesn't. That's not what the Quran is saying. The Quran is not saying that because there's mountains here, there's going to be less earthquakes. It's not what it's saying. It's saying that it's going to provide stability to seismic activity and equilibrium to whatever the seismic activity is. So you might have 100 earthquakes, but you'll feel none of them. And you might have 5 on the other side and you'll feel every 5 because there's no mountains.
You know,
You understand
Morris,
what I'm saying?
if I may. So I think he needs to understand as far as the function of mountains, a function of mountains, right? So if you would allow me, I want to read exactly what the effects of what would happen if mountains were removed. Would that be okay?
Bismillah, bro. And we'll end it at this point because we have other guests, man.
Okay. So
no problem. I can leave.
So here we go. So if mountains were suddenly gone, the effects on Earth would be profound and far-reaching. Here are some of the consequences. Number 1, geological instability. Mountains are formed through tectonic processes, and the removal would lead to geological instability. This could result in increased earthquake, volcanic activity, and tsunamis. Number 2, disruption of global water cycles. Mountains are responsible for storing and releasing water through glaciers, snowpack, and groundwater. Without mountains, global water cycles will be severely disrupted, leading to changes in sea levels, ocean currents, and weather patterns. 3, increased flooding. Mountains act as natural barriers, slowing down water flows and preventing floods. Without mountains, rivers would flow more quickly, leading to increased flooding in low-lying areas. 4, changes in climate. Mountains play a crucial role in shaping regional climate. They block or redirect winds, creating rain shadows and influencing precipitation patterns. Without mountains, climates would become more uniform, leading to changes in temperature, precipitation, and weather patterns. And there's literally about 10 more of these. So I'm just going to stop right here.
No, bro, nobody is disagreeing with what you just said. Everybody knows how important the mountains are for the atmosphere and the weather patterns. I'll just leave. You can continue, no problem.
No problem, bro. But, thank you for coming and appreciate your
yes
respectful nature, man. And reach out to us and come
no
back.
problem, sir.
Reflect on the things that we said, and bring evidences. If you wanna make this your argument, no problem. Just bring the evidence.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, bring the evidences next time, and we'll explore it, and we'll take it step by step. But in the meantime, I want to thank you for coming and being super respectful. Brother Mansoor, I don't know if you wanted to say anything to him.
No, because if you have other guests to continue, that's fine.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you very much. Hopefully we can talk again. Thank you very much.
That sounds good, man. Be safe.